Hello, beautiful friends. It looks like we're getting set and getting in here. So hopefully everyone's able to hear me beautifully well. Today we are going to talk about this new moon solar eclipse that's coming just through our weekend. In front of it, we've got a bit of activity happening with the solstice coming in. There is just a lot. So I'm going to march us through not only this new moon solar eclipse that's coming, but I'm also going to talk us through a handful of days surrounding this timing as well. And I'm going to actually show you on my chart so I can continue to practice using new technology to share screen with you, to share all of these goodies with you. So have a little bit of grace with me, but I am going to show you my iPad and show you all these cool new things I'm learning to do with my iPad. And Astro Gold is the program that I use on my iPad. So if anybody's thinking, how do we do this? What's a great thing to do? What's a great thing to use? Astro Gold is the way to go. And if you do happen to have Solar Fire, this is a program that is compatible with Solar Fire. So very momentarily, we should be seeing my mirroring happening on the screen. How's everybody doing? How are y'all doing out there? I'm hoping everybody had a chance to come over and experience the goodness of Astrology Hub. I'm hoping that that got to be a thing. So I'm going to answer a couple questions while we're getting set up here, while I'm getting this thing working. And I see a question in the chat that is asking if I believe in, which I don't know if I believe in it or I don't believe in it, but whether or not I use Placidus or whole sign. And the answer to that is, in my private practice of reading charts and doing those kinds of things, I use Placidus or Placidus, however you'd like to say that. But I do my horoscopes using equal, and there are other things like profections that I would definitely use the equal house method as well. So I am hoping that you guys are able to see my beautiful chart that I've got pulled up here. It looks a little wonky on my screen, but hopefully you're going to be able to see it. And we will trudge and trolley forward and talk about what's coming up with this new moon solar eclipse, which is a big deal. This is a big deal for us. This is a big time, and it's happening at the time of our solstice. It's happening at 0 degrees of Cancer, which is significant because it's a beginning degree in a cardinal sign. So that is significant. That is important for us. It is a brilliant and beautiful place to be having a beginning. Not to mention, this eclipse is also going to be happening right with the North Node. So that is the pathway forward, right? We have a beginning in a cardinal sign, and then we've got the node, which is always trying to pull us forward. So this is a time, this is a place where we have a significant pathway forward. That doesn't mean that we're running towards that pathway at any kind of speed, but we do have an opening to pull some things forward. Now, the only actual really big aspect that is happening that is exact with this eclipse is going to be the Saturn being in quincunx to this particular eclipse, which is something that I will I'll jump into that as well. But ultimately, what we're going to see in that quincunx energy is that that's kind of our stopping block, right? We want to move forward. We want to go towards this node and this pulling forward kind of energy, but we feel stuck a little bit. You know what I mean? We feel stuck. So that is going to be the stopping block. But before we jump in and we talk about what's happening with this particular eclipse, I want to walk you forward, just starting from tomorrow's Mercury retrograde and moving us through the end of the month. But I would also love for you to keep in mind that when we're talking about eclipses not only come in pairs typically, but they also come in their own cycles. So the last time we really saw an eclipse happen at a solstice point was 19 years ago. So we saw it in 2001. And then, of course, you can track back 19 years from then. But one of the big focuses that I have, and we were just talking about it in the Astrology Hub marathon as well, is that because this was in 2001, and at least here in the United States, it was a global shift for us too. too, but here in the United States, we had literal bombings. We had 9/11 that was happening. We had something, a catalyst that shifted and changed our world entirely, right? And this time, as the nodes are in Gemini and Sagittarian energy, what we have at this particular eclipse are truth bombs. Truth bombs are being dropped on us, right? And truth bombs we are dropping on ourselves in our own home lives and in our own experiences, which is, what is my truth, right? And traveling with the energy of the node, it is truly having to get vulnerable enough to tell our truths without being deceived. So there's a fair amount that's going to go into that as well. But let's start with tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are going to move ourselves here into Mercury retrograde. So almost welcome to Mercury retrograde, my friends. Now, this Mercury retrograde is going to start at 14 degrees of Cancer, and it's going to travel all the way back to 5 degrees of Cancer and station direct July 12th in that energy of Cancer. So of course, if you are a Gemini, if you are a Virgo, if you are a Gemini or a Virgo or even a Cancer rising, these are going to be felt a bit more intensely for you because it's your ruling planet, and also it is happening in the energy of Cancer. So, but it doesn't mean that if you don't have one of those placements active and happening in your chart, maybe you have an empty house where that Cancerian energy is at, or that Gemini energy, or that Virgo energy, but it doesn't mean you're getting skipped with the Mercury retrograde. Okay. No, you are not so fortunate, right? Nobody is exempt from a Mercury retrograde. But as Mercury does go retrograde here on the 18th, what we have an opportunity to do is to evaluate emotional intelligence, right? Intelligence, we come from the mind, the perception, the smaller mind, and how we learn, how we gather and absorb information. That is the business of Mercury. In Cancer, it's about our emotions. It's about what makes me feel like home. It's what nurtures me, what nurtures my soul, what nurtures my spirit. Also, as we have this Mercury situation retrograding, it's going to come conjunct the sun, called Kazemi. So this starts a new Mercury cycle as well. So in all of it, in the emotional intelligence, in the feeling, in the relooking at home, relooking at the past, relooking at questions of truly, we're in Gemini Sagittarian times. Why do you believe what you believe? Is it because it was handed to you from the past? Does that fit your current reality? That's a big question that has been happening all year long. And this node continues to dig into that, especially in the energy of Cancer, because sometimes we're at home with the information we've previously received, right? It's like, oh, well, I know that, so I believe in that, right? I was taught that, so I believe in that. And is it accurate is the question that I think we become responsive and responsible to at this particular Mercury retrograde time, right? Now, the other thing that I just want to point out about the retrograde as it begins tomorrow is all Mercury retrograde qualities and cautions and helps also apply here. Remember, nobody's exempt from a Mercury retrograde. So we're all walking forward, but really the primary direction of our energy and our thinking is backwards. So if you're walking forward, but your vision is backwards, you're going to bump into somebody, right? Like you're going to be like, bonk. So a little bit of grace, maybe a lot of bit of grace at this particular Mercury retrograde, because everybody's in it, right? Now, some people, if you have your natal Mercury retrograde in your chart, this Mercury retrograde may feel really freeing or really relieving for you. You know what I mean? That may be absolutely brilliant energy for you. So however you're experiencing your Mercury retrograde, just remember that there's a fair amount of people who are flipped in an opposite direction, and that may need a little bit of grace. Okay. All right. Also, as we're considering just the layout of the sky when we come to the Mercury retrograde tomorrow, we will have Venus is still retrograde. Mercury, of course, will be retrograde. Jupiter's retrograde. Saturn's retrograde. Pluto's retrograde. Okay, so we've got a fair amount of planets that are retrograde. So the introspection, or the going back to something from the past, whether it be in your personal life, whether it be globally, this is where the energy is pointing us beginning tomorrow. And I think many of us can even feel it coming in today. I have Mercury at the top of my chart, right? So I have definitely been feeling it, certainly in the business platforms. So you may be feeling it as well, right? Now, Mercury is also going to begin this square energy with Chiron. And so this digs back into the wound. Chiron is traveling through the energy of Aries. We'll be taking that retrograde as we get into July. But at this particular point, Chiron is facing direct. So we are going back to the ideas, the emotional intelligence around our own identities. What's my identity, right? What do I want? What am I passionate about? What do I believe in? How do I regard myself? How do I put myself out there? So these are all going to be questions we're going to deal with. And with Mercury on the table, there's a lot of representation. We can consider how you're participating in it. Even right now, what are you writing? What are you saying? What are you speaking? What are you studying? What are you letting into your life? What are you teaching to other people, right? Because in something that you're teaching or you have to give away, you may actually be bringing healing to other people as well. So that's something to consider there, okay? As we get just a day forward and we're crawling our way towards this eclipse, we're going to see the sun come conjunct this north node before we have solstice, before we have the solar eclipse happening. Now, I think that this is important, because what happens when the sun comes conjunct that north node is it not only brings light, heat, life, vitality, passion, and energy, a motivation to be seen, to be moving in this particular energy, right? But we also are doing it at the node, which is the light forward, right? So if we're walking through a dark cave and then we have the sun come in and we have this leading force that is this Gemini north node with that lantern, like bringing us forward, bringing new light, shedding light onto the walls of the things that we couldn't see, right? But the question with the node, whether it's in your chart, whether you're looking at it in transit, what we're always trying to do with that north node energy is fulfill a purpose, fulfill a destiny, this is the work, right? Like this is the work with the transiting node of the time. This is where we're trying to go, and it's not easy. It is never easy to do the work of the north node or your north node, depending on how you're looking at it. So because the sun is going to be conjunct that north node and it's just so much light, heat, life, and vitality, I think it's a beautiful time to look at, where are you Geminiing? Where are you being flexible in your thinking and your speaking and your learning? Where are you allowing new perspectives into your life? Because that transiting south node in Sagittarius, we are trying to detach from some old beliefs of cultures, beliefs of studies, beliefs of laws, beliefs of all sorts of things that have been living up there and have been a part of our structure for a very long time. And like the fire energy that it is, they have literally been burned into our consciousness, right? And so where, as we approach the 19th and we move forward, where are you willing to accept or willing to welcome a new perspective on something that maybe is not what you thought it was at all? And where are you willing to let new information into your life? And I have a really practical example of this to share with you too, because it can be very woo-woo. We can get very woo-woo very fast, and we are over here. That's just the deal. But if you are, even having some job changes, job situations going on with COVID and things like that, and you don't like your job, or you feel like there's more, it doesn't mean that you always have to quit your job. It's not always about, this month, put something down and pick up something new because you got to quit your whole job and scare your family and stress out about your financial and emotional security. It's not that. In that same job that you have, where can you open to a new perspective? Where can you be open enough to say, well, maybe I'm not rising and advancing because I'm not bringing anything new to the table, right? Maybe I'm not rising and advancing because I'm so tired when I come to work every day. I don't have enough of me to offer, right? And in that position, there you welcome in your new teachers, your new training, your new whatever it is that can serve to take you to that next level, right? It's that place where you don't always have to burn your life to the ground in order to have the fresh start and to have the fulfilling sense that I think many of us are looking for, right? Because some of us, maybe you're a really great real estate agent, but you don't want to do it this way anymore. Okay, well, where's the training to take you to that next place, the next level? It's going to require a fair amount of open-mindedness to shift into that perspective. Okay. All right. Then we get to the 20th and we're going to have 20th, 21st, just depending on where you live. We are going to, experience the solstice. Now, depending on where you are, it's either becoming summer or winter for you. Either way, we're solsticing when we are switching directions. This is going to define the next 3 months of the year, right? And it's in a cardinal energy because cardinal energies start us out. They get us going. They get us moving. Well, they start us, right? And then they kind of, they flake off because they got to go do something else, right? But so here, as we come to this solstice energy, there's just this sense of home and past and security and how do we live in our own shell, that Cancer energy. And also I think it gives us permission at this particular point in the year to be very flexible, because if you think about it, crabs don't walk directly at anything. They walk very sideways. So where do you need to kind of sideways wiggle and waddle to get yourself to new information, new perspectives and stuff like that? This is a perfect time at this change of season to be able to do that. Maybe you are having important or significant astrological things happening in your life at this time too, and you can't just walk straight at it. You maybe have to go a little bit of sideways to figure out where your new home is. And sometimes that can even just be home inside of your physical body. How do your hips sit on your body at this age? How do you hold your shoulders back at this age, right? Are you still pulling your belly button to your spine at this age and time in your life? Where is your literal home and how is the posture of that? So things to consider around that. That is going to walk us into the 21st when we're going to have this new moon solar eclipse. So this is our new moon for the month. Now, typically we have a new moon, and that is the exact astrology of that is the sun and the moon together in conjunction. That's their technique, their actual astrological technique that they come together in. And this is where we plant our seeds of intention to begin something new, right? To allow something to take new shape, right? And now instead of just 4 weeks, this is going to last 6 months for us until we get to the next solar eclipse that's going to be happening in December as we get ready to close out this year. But this is the one that we can also tie back 19 years ago and look at 2001. What was happening in your life? What were you beginning? What were you at a turning point in your life or in the world? You know, we were at some turning points in the world for sure, but I like to bring it down to your personal life as well. Think back to 2001. What was your turning point that you were at that particular time, right? That's a pretty big deal. So as we're here at this eclipse, now let's look at this bad boy on the screen so I can point out some things, okay? So the first thing that we want to notice is that this particular eclipse in its true form is holding the aspect of the sun and the moon together conjunct. That's the actual aspect that happens when we have a new moon coming for us, okay? Now, this particular one is at 0 degrees, okay? So it's right at 0 degrees, right at the beginning of Cancer, right there with the solstice coming in. I mean, the eclipse is just hours after the solstice. So it's really, it's like a vacuum. It's just like, zoop, sucking us in, right? This is like, boom, the sun is changing direction in the sky. Now, this is what we call an annular eclipse, okay? So it creates this, I'm not going to draw it because it'll be terrible. But it creates what we call this ring of fire, right? So we see this like little ring. It looks like it's burning as we look up into the sky. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to see this one here. This one is for our friends in Africa, the Middle East, Asia. They're going to be able to see it, but we get to still take advantage of the energy, okay, if you're here in the United States. Now, the solar eclipse, besides being in conjunction with the sun and the moon happening here, is also in conjunction with this north node that I've been talking about like crazy. Now, this is a position of hope. This is a position of that north node in Gemini saying there is new information, there's new perceptions, there's new thinking, there's new teachers, there's new ways of communicating, there's new ways of viewing past issues, right? In a frame that we haven't considered before. So this is literally at this eclipse, the opportunity to start something new with new information, new teachers. It's like rewrite your stars. I always think about that song. I can't even remember the movie now. It just went out of my head, but you know what I'm talking about with Zendaya and Zac Efron. Why don't we, I'm not going to sing, rewrite the stars, right? Like we get to rewrite the stars with this particular position. And we're going to do it through the basis of information plus feeling down and rooting down into the Cancer, into home, into our bodies, into what makes me secure, what needs healing, what needs nurturing of my spirit. But it is ultimately the gift of an opening of an opportunity for every single one of us, right? Now, the other part of that we're going to see here is that at this particular eclipse, what we see is that we've got this quincunx happening, and it's at 0 degrees, just like our eclipse with Saturn. Okay, now a quincunx is an energy that asks for adjustment from us. It's stuck. Both sides are right. They are accurate. You know, Saturn's up here saying we have to get serious about technology. We have to get serious about independence. We have to get serious about how one of us helps to take care of the whole. What is your role? Do you know what I mean? Like, so Saturn is up there saying we have to get serious about this. And then down at the bottom part, it's saying I also need to feel into this, but I need to start a new home. The greatest showman, that's right. I need to start a new home. We need to start a new home. So this quincunx is asking us for a fair amount of adjustment. That's what you do with a quincunx, because both sides are correct. Both sides are willing to engage, but they're saying, I don't quite understand how you're trying to get something done. So here we are with this eclipse, with this node that's like, yes, let's pull forward, let's move forward, right? And then we hit this quincunx with Saturn that's like, well, wait, I'm restricted in some way. I'm held back in some way, right? With Saturn in Aquarius, it is the definition of, okay, I'm willing to heal down here, but how can I heal and how can I nurture when I am quincunx separated from my fellows, right? The only way I can get together with my fellows is primarily on technology. How do I hold you? How do I heal with you when I'm separated from you, right? So you have to be flexible. You have to be open-minded. You have to be creative. You have to definitely be using these gifts of perception out on the internet, out on the interwebs, right? Flexibility and open-mindedness are going to be the key ways forward around this quincunx, but ultimately too, when planets are in quincunx, you don't have to push, right? You don't have to push. You do not have to try to push your way through. You do not have to try and dominate the energy to make it happen. That is actually not going to be any version of useful for you. So there becomes this place where it is between like where I want to go forward and where I have to stop and I have to stand still. So if you have to stop and stand still, just stop and stand still, okay? Now, the other situation that we see happening here is that this particular eclipse, it's loose, but I'm going to count it anyways. It's also square here to our friend Mars. Okay, so we've got an eclipse that is square Mars, quincunx Saturn over here. We've got Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, all retrograde, not to mention just a day after this, Neptune's going to head retrograde. What in the world? And then Venus will come out of retrograde, but what in the world do we do with that, right? We've got to take it backwards. We've got to lean into this loose aspects of this beautiful T-square that we see here, where in a T-square, you have to look at the apex point, which is right here. This is where we're struggling. We're struggling with Mars and Pisces here. I don't know what to do, is what this comes down to, right? I've got this push and pull of new and old information. And right here, I'm just not sure what to do. I know I need to do something, but what do I need to do? What can I do is a beautiful question. And think about this, not so much in the scheme of the global situation in your own house. Where are you feeling pushed? Like there's something I need to do, or there's something I want to do, or there's 100 ideas that I want to do. And what do I do to move forward? And the answer is you move like the crab, walk a little indirectly and slowly, forward until you find where your right footing is to take you forward on your path. It can just be done in baby steps. But if you try to push, if you try to run in water, essentially, which is what happens when Mars is in Pisces, it ends up being more draining. We end up taxing the immune system. We end up taxing our exhaustion, right? And then we can't come to the table in full gear, in full energy, right? Now, like I said, on the 23rd, we get just a day later, and we've got Neptune, who's happily traveling over here with Mars. Neptune's going to go retrograde. So as Neptune is doing her retrograde, Neptune's going to be retrograde, bringing our attention. This is the thing about outer planets, is they kind of weave in and out of that retrograde most of the time. And because they're below the surface, sometimes they don't feel as powerful. But when Neptune is retrograde, it's this idea of dissolving our oneness, or dissolving something that has been, right? Now, this idea that we are separated, that quincunx that we're seeing with the solar eclipse, it gets to dissolve this idea that we are separated. We may be physically separated, but we all still have access. There is an access to other human beings that we can continue to live in. But what it will require as well, whether we're together in physical person or we're doing things in our own homes, is that our egos have to dissolve, right? What I think I know and what I think I should be doing kind of has to dissolve a little bit to dissolve that idea of separation, or dissolve that idea that I'm the only one who can get things done, right? Because that's a great question, I think, at this particular time as well. Where in your life are you maybe bumping up against this idea that I have to do this, because if I don't do this, how will it get done? How will it get figured out if I don't do this, right? That very much so energy. Or here's another one with this eclipse being in Cancer and having so much with the body. One of the questions I keep hearing come up here is this place where, well, I don't really get emotional with people. I don't really let people see that side of me. I don't really let people touch me, right? I don't really go there, right? Like, so where can you go there while Neptune is asleep for this next handful of months, right? Because when Neptune goes direct, what's going to happen is, if you've used the retrograde time to realize that maybe what you've been doing, maybe what you've thought is a useful reality for a long time, is not serving you at the highest level, because with Neptune retrograde, it's going to become concrete. You will be left to see that delusion is not working anymore, right? So when it comes direct, you can come out with a tribe. You can come out in a position where you not only feel like you're centered differently, but you also realize that it was okay to dissolve and let go of some of these things that are like, I have to do everything. I have to travel alone. I'm whatever. I also think that Neptune retrograde is a great place for us to get rid of the victim mentality, right? Because this is the thing. We're in a pandemic, and we're human beings in a pandemic. And it turns out self-pity, self-loathing, self-deprecation, these are things that we do, and we get the opportunity to get rid of that. So just after this eclipse, we have this beautifully intuitive planet taking a dip backwards, allowing us to dissolve, but also see the concreteness of the things that we're doing that maybe aren't serving us the best. We get to the 25th. I'm looking at the calendar here. We get to the 25th, and we're going to see Venus come out of retrograde. Venus is going to go direct. So yes, thank you very much. That is enough of that, right? 40, what has it been? 42 days that we've been experiencing that, 40 days, 40 nights. And it's like, yes, Venus, come on out of here. So Venus is going to arrive direct at 5 degrees of Gemini. So make sure you pick that out on your chart. Okay. And when Venus comes direct, I don't know. I have this sense for us that it's like Venus of value, of love, of relationships, of what I value about myself, what I value about my thinking, the beautiful mind. I feel like we come out of this retrograde, especially as we push towards July, feeling a bit more beautiful. Where's the beauty? Where's the gratitude in our lives? Where are we living and dealing with things in a way that speaks to their value? You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be a really interesting time to see how Venus coming direct is going to have also healed a little bit of the things that we felt divided on, right? Because it's like, well, I don't feel divided on that anymore. It just doesn't have any value. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down. Now, on the 28th of this month, we see Mars moving into Aries, and Mars is going to be comfortably in his home sign for quite some time. We're going to really experience his influence for the rest of the year. As he moves into Aries, then he's going to take the retrograde between September and November timeframe. And so why and how does that fit in with this eclipse? Because these are our next action steps as we're moving throughout the rest of June and getting ready for the rest of the year. With Mars in Aries and direct, he is hot, he is handsome, he is ready to go. But Mars also has a beautiful other side of him too that matches looking at how do we use feminine and masculine energy to its fullest potential in what we're doing. Because in the energy of Aries, what we're trying to do is take domicile and precedence over our own identities, right? And Mars is going to put those boots in action to take you out in the world. So how do you live that, right? How do we live that? We're dissolving the ego over here. We're pulling the pathway forward, right? Maybe you got to look at how you engage. How are we engaging out in the world? This is the warrior. If you heard me talking with Brian Coulter, he talks about the fierce warrior, fierce healing, fierce integrity, right? That's the way we're going to do this deal out here. As the conversations continue to come up about race and politics, because this is a political year, no matter how you frame it, right? Where is your engagement level? Where are you not healed enough to participate in conversation? Where are you not being courageous enough to bring a beautiful view and perspective and facts and information to the table, right? Because I know some of y'all, you are so good at the history. You are so good at looking at these facts, and you have these quieter voices, right? So where do you have your courage to come out in being your fierce warrior in that particular way? Now, I also do think, in the world itself, Mars in Aries can definitely come out direct and fierce and aggressive. There is a fair amount of fear. There's still going to be a fair amount of delusion. Not everybody is attempting to rise to a level of integrity or rise to the place where we live beyond the fear. So there is a warring potential that is available here. And that is not to speak fear out into the world. We just have to talk about what it is, right? We've already been here. We've survived our own history, right? So we've been here. We will survive again, but we can also have the opportunity to do this just a little bit different, which I think is absolutely beautiful. And Christopher Renstrom, if you have an opportunity to check him out, he's a phenomenal astrologer, and he does speak to the history and the fact that we have already been here and we can definitely survive it. So take bold actions as Mars moves into Aries. Just be very clear why you are taking those actions, and research not your intentions, but your motives. It is very easy to hide a really crappy motive under what looks like a very pretty intention. So this is an opportunity for all of us to say, why am I really doing what I'm doing? Gemini, Sagittarian energy, because what we start here at this solar eclipse, for good or for ill, we run with it for the next 6 months, right? So what are you going to put your fierce warriorness towards here? And then after it happens, how are you going to walk? Mars and Aries will help you do that. Now, as we close out this month on June 30th, we're going to see the second of 3 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions as they come together. Now, they came together in direct fashion, where both Jupiter and Pluto were direct in April. So April 4th, what were you doing? What were you starting? What did you feel passionate about? What were you pushing into? Think about it in your own life. I really want to bring this down to your chart, right? But also now, as we come back to it, this is like a Kickstarter. This is the one I keep talking about as Sonic the Hedgehog, right? When he would get the Chaos Diamond and he would just take to running because he's passionate and he's loaded and he's got all of this information. I don't know what I just did there, but he's got all of this information and he's got all of this like, yes, let's go kind of energy. So he's just running, right? Now, in a global sense, when we first saw the first hit of this is really when, and this was back in April, just so we're staying on the same timeline, April 4th. This is when we really saw coronavirus in doing the most, right? Now, the final conjunction of this is going to happen November 12th. But as we arrive to this one that takes us out of June, what I think happens is, first of all, in a global way, veils are lifted. An eclipse will also always lift the veil, uncover things that were hidden. But with Jupiter and Pluto both retrograde and conjunction here, we have to say, where have I been making things bigger than what they are? Right? Where have I been making myself bigger, badder, more sexy than I actually am? Where do I need more training? Where do I need more specified information? I like the idea of healing, but this one doesn't necessarily, I think, speak to that idea for me. For this one, in the energy of Capricorn, it feels very practical. Where do I need to study more to come to the next place? It's a time where so many of our ideas are being pushed and challenged to include within our work, Capricorn, our workplaces. Where did I think I had the path all together, but I'm finding out that I need more ideas, I need more training, I need more any of these things, right? But I also think that it's in a very positive way, because we'll come to a place of solutions. We'll come to a place of, okay, I've got to take a different path in order to do that. We'll see Paulus Athena up here. She's traveling with the boys up here. So we'll see Paulus getting involved as well at this particular one. So whatever you started in April, now you get to set the course for a new pathway forward. And Paulus Athena is going to help you print that map. She's going to help you get that strategy together, because Paulus Athena is a gangster at strategy, right? So I think it's going to be really actually a lovely time, but it will definitely be the time where we have to be honest about where we're not as pumped up as we could be. Where do we need to do a little bit of homework? Where can we be more generous and more kind, right? I think that those are going to be definitely some things that we deal with at this particular time. There's a lot happening in June in general, but just even as we're leaving June and we're getting ready tomorrow to jump into the new, to the Mercury retrograde and Mercury's new cycle and all of those things, and then we trudge forward, this eclipse does set the tone and does set the stage for where we get to go in this next 6 months, from our personal lives to the global sphere. So in your chart, look for planets that are at 0 degrees. Of course, you want to look for 0 degrees of Cancer in your chart. What house is that happening in, and what is it connected to? Now, you'll know that it's got some definite connections to other planets in your chart. If you have other planets that are 0 degrees, of course, or 0 to 5 degrees, or 5 degrees in either direction, forward or backwards, even if it does change sign. Okay, so you're going to see some influence happening in those particular places. So you want to look for that. With the Mercury retrogrades, for sure, again, you're still focusing on a fair amount of Cancer energy. It's beginning at 14 degrees of Cancer. It will come out at 5 degrees. So keep an eye on these things in your chart. And I would love to hear in the comment section down below what your experience is around this eclipse. I always suggest to people, whether it is a solar eclipse, a lunar eclipse, if you can lighten your load a little bit on those particular days, it's going to be a really nice thing for you to just be able to breathe, let that energy hit you. And the thing about the eclipse for me is that usually the energies hit me 2 weeks later, that I am solidly in the know that something has shifted within my emotional life, my security life. And what it usually looks like for me as like a grouchy little Taurus is it hits me 2 weeks later and I'm like, well, I hate everything. And then I get on board and I'm like, okay, well, practically what can I do to come to the other side of that? So, just kind of start to be aware, if you can, how these eclipses hit you, what's kind of the timing in how they hit and reflect for you as well. So it's going to be an interesting time. I look forward to walking through this season with you for sure, hearing what's going on with you. I love the collective feedback. I try and answer you guys every single time. I also hope that in this season as we're changing and going forward and getting some new things set, creating some new, I don't want to say new norms, but creating some new positions of energetic movement, that you guys are enjoying the eat and greets as well. And we will have more of those this week. We've got David Cochran coming tomorrow to welcome in that Mercury retrograde. Sam Reynolds will be here on Friday. Rick Levine is coming back because we had such a hot mess the first time. So he will be here next Monday, the 22nd. And Elizabeth Grace and I will be teaching together on the 26th. And Alejo will be here on the 29th, and we will actually just be talking about eclipses. It's an actual study session. So I look forward to bringing that to you. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time and your attention as you come to interact with my videos. So hopefully I am serving your attention and your time very, very well. Like this video, comment, share, subscribe. I love you, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, everyone.